Welcome, everybody. We have another wonderful guest today, Theresa Free. She is a nurse practitioner, and she has her business is Be Free Lifestyle Medicine. Welcome, Theresa.
Hi, Katharine. Thanks for having me.
So, under the umbrella, having spoken with Dr. Theresa Montez, she said that you are within the complex of the Cedar Avenue Integrative Medicine, but you have your own business, the Be Free Lifestyle. Could you explain to people what Be Free Lifestyle Medicine is? What is lifestyle medicine?
Yeah, so lifestyle medicine is really about getting to the root cause of most of the disease that we see in this country. So I started out as a traditional nurse practitioner. I've actually been a nurse for about 22 years. And much of that time I spent working with people with a variety of chronic illnesses. And what I came to see was that by taking a traditional allopathic approach, that we were prescribing medications to help manage these chronic illnesses, and that we would continue to have to keep prescribing more and more and more medications to either counter effect the side effects of one medication, or maybe that medication isn't working as well as it used to, so we're adding another medication. And we would end up with these just collections of medications that people would be taking, and yet I never really saw people getting better. What I saw instead was that people were getting sicker and sicker. Sometimes we could stave off illness for a while, but really we weren't doing anything to make people better. And what I learned was that more than 80% of our illnesses in this country the root cause of them is the lifestyle that we live, the choices that we make on a daily basis that either promote or affect negatively our health. And so I decided to get back to the roots of what's really causing these illnesses so that we can actually help people to get better and to heal their bodies and to get well. And many times get off of medications that really are, just not really doing what we would have hoped they would have done, right?
Yeah. So in our busy lifestyle in society, one of the things that I recognize when I work with people in what I do is there is a lot of comforting oneself, whether it be with a substance or food, and we've become quite lethargic with our health. So your story I found very fascinating and very enlightening on what drove you to doing lifestyle medicine. Can you speak to that and kind of give people an idea of your own path that brought you to this?
Absolutely. And thank you for asking. So, yeah, I had struggled with my weight for all of my life. I had been a chronic yo-yo dieter. It really began, I think, when I was quite young. I think I was probably around 10, maybe, when I went on my first diet. My mom took me to a program called TOPS, Taking Off Pounds Sensibly. And I don't think I was particularly overweight. I think I was getting that preteen kind of a little bit chunky, maybe, but going through puberty, and I lost 8 pounds on that first diet. And I think for me, there was something about losing that first 8 pounds that was like very rewarding for you know, as a child, I got rewarded for losing that weight. And so it started a cycle, a pattern in my life of yo-yo dieting. And so I would do fine on a diet for a while, but then I would fall off. And then next thing I know, all my weight is back again. And I'm like, I had no idea, like, what is going on with me? Why can't I keep the weight off? I was also a nurse. And so I felt very hypocritical as being a healthcare professional that couldn't control my weight. And so I felt just miserable in my body. And so it was in 2012 when I first came across a book called The China Study by Dr. T. Colin Campbell. And in that book, I learned about some of the science behind a whole food plant-based diet. And at that time, I couldn't really understand why I hadn't learned a lot of this in my traditional training as a nurse. I, you know, at that point in time, you know, had a bachelor's degree in nursing, and you know, had never had any exposure to this type of nutritional education. And so I was actually a little bit floored by what I learned there and the power of a plant-based diet. And so that began a kind of new stage in my journey where when I learned some of the science behind it, particularly there was things such as the fact that we can turn cancer genes on and off by taking just normal doses of milk proteins. Okay. I didn't know that science existed and that we could just turn cancer genes off and on with like a light switch by the milk that we were drinking. And when I learned that, I thought, you know, if that's the case and we can turn cancer genes off and on by eating animal products, or turn them on by eating animal products, and we don't need to eat animal products, then why would I take the risk of exposing my body to something that's potentially cancer causing? And so I stopped eating animal products in 2012. And at that time, I still was struggling with my weight. I was completely plant-based, but there were still foods that I was having trouble managing, and I couldn't still figure out what was going on. So I continued to study and learn, and what I found out was I learned about the neuroscience of food addiction and about how our brains can be hijacked by the processed foods mainly that we eat, right?
Right.
And I wasn't eating a lot of that stuff, but I was eating enough of it that it was affecting my brain and that it was preventing me from losing the weight that I wanted to lose. And so I learned really about doing whole foods, right? Not processed food, plant foods.
Right. There is a big difference.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then at that point, I did adopt a whole food plant-based diet. And there's a little bit more to that story because I did do a program that addressed the food addiction issue and helped me to heal my brain from that particular issue. And once I did that, I was able to lose 100 pounds. And
wow.
Yes. And
that is amazing.
And I was able to keep off my weight now for over 3 years, which for me, I had never done in the past. I had never been able to sustain any kind of weight loss for any period of time. So for me, having this period of maintenance really has brought me a lot of confidence and now feeling like I can share what I have learned with others.
That's awesome. So for the people watching, when you talk about a plant-based diet, for the translation for them, is that vegetarian? Is that vegan? What does that constitute in lay terms for people?
So you might consider it a vegan diet, although what I was doing before was a vegan diet, right? So when in 2012, I was on a vegan diet, but I was, chips and beer are still vegan, right?
Right.
So, so I was doing a vegan diet, but it was not the healthiest diet that I could have been on at the time, right? So when I'm talking about whole food, plant-based, I'm talking about all whole plant foods.
Okay. So if someone looks at this and says, wow, that's extraordinary, I want to give that a go, but they feel overwhelmed, how do they discern between the plant-based processed foods and what's good and what's not? Is that, I'm going to assume that's something that you cover when someone comes to you for, your overall well-being, that your care that you give people.
Sure. There's different levels of processing in foods, of course. As we know, you may have a can of whole beans that has nothing in it but beans, and that would be considered a minimally processed food, right? Whereas we may have a processed food that has 50 ingredients in it. So, of course, the less processed, the better. I do use a few minimally processed foods like that, like maybe a frozen fruits or frozen vegetables or some canned fruits, vegetables, things like that, canned beans. On occasion, I try to even limit that as much as I can, but there, for convenience, sometimes those things make sense. And I'm not entirely opposed to something that's, been frozen or canned. But it's more about the ingredient list and keeping the ingredient list as short as possible.
Right.
So that's what I would generally teach.
So when you look at something like this and what you do, how is that different from, say, a Whole30 kind of and I realize that is not a diet. The Whole30 was meant as a jump off point to relieve things in the body, get you back to eating what is a whole food diet, and then slowly adding things in. That's how they operated. Is that similar to what you take people down to minimal of what they eat and add things in?
So I think that the difference between Whole30 is that this is an entire lifestyle shift that I recommend to people, because it's about what we do every day of our lives, all these decisions that we make day in and day out that affect our health. And,
right.
I don't necessarily think that something like the Whole30, if that gives you an opportunity to feel what it feels like to be healthy for 30 days, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, because you can feel a difference in your body after 30 days. The problem I feel like with Whole30, in fact, I recently was speaking with a client who had been doing Whole30 quite frequently, was that when she would try to introduce things back in, she was not able to manage those processed foods and keep them controllable, right? So there was a compulsiveness to it, to those craving of those particular foods that would kind of get her hooked back into them again. And before you know it, you're hooked back onto those foods again. And then, before long, your weight's creeping back up and, up and beyond where it had been before sometimes. So for me, it was the nature of some of those foods being the addictability of those foods that really is the problem. And when I talked about the food addiction and about how I had to heal my brain, that was part of what I learned, was that I can't eat those foods in moderation. Just like I can't smoke in moderation or can't drink in moderation, right? Like some people, and it doesn't affect everybody the same way, of course, but many people do have issues with these foods causing cravings and compulsive eating. So that's what happened for me, and I know it happens for a lot of other people as well.
So let's touch on a little bit around that, the brain activity and the cravings.
Hmm?
And through things in my own life with my partner and otherwise, I have been up against a lot of caregivers, nurses, those kind of things. And I do find that they tend to carry weight. And I guess where I'm going with this is, so what is the component for looking at how the brain works and the emotional aspect of eating? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so that's a really good point, and you are right that nurses are actually not any better off, despite our level of improved health literacy and dealing with a disease that's completely preventable. Nurses are affected at the same rates as everyone else. In fact, I'm doing my doctoral project right now on obesity in nursing. And so thank you for asking, because it really is it's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, because I was very close to that problem. and I know a lot of people who struggle with it. And so for me, because being a nurse, half of nursing is art and half of nursing is science, right?
Yeah.
And the science part of it really was important to me, to understand what was going on in my brain. I needed to know the actual biology, the biochemistry that was happening inside my brain, so that I could go, oh, okay, now I understand that when I have that thing that I am craving,
Yeah.
what happens to my brain. And now when I know that happens when I eat it, now I don't want to eat it anymore, because I don't want to hurt my brain in that way, right?
Right. So I'm going to kind of dive down a little bit more on this, because I know
Sure.
and people in the care industry, whatever level it is, they tend to take on other people's emotional things, which drives them to comfort through eating, is one of the ways. And within your practice, is that something that you speak to or you can refer to? The emotional aspect is very difficult for people to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Oh no, I'm done for the day. I go home and I'm fine. I don't take my job home with me. And that isn't necessarily true. There's so much pain and so much that they deal with. How can you help them with that?
Well, I like to start by really addressing how important it is to take care of ourselves first. Really, it's about putting on our own mask first, because if we can't take care of ourselves, we just don't have what it takes to take care of others. So I really try to focus on that, on really how can we take care of ourselves so that we can then take care of others, right? We know how important nursing is, how important other caring professions are, and how much it's needed in this world. And yet we we need to take a step back and we need to take care of ourselves, because if we can't take care of ourselves, then we can't do right by the patients and the clients, you know, that we serve. So that's the way I like to look at it with caregiving. It's we really do have to just take a step back. We need to allow ourselves to take care of ourselves first. And yes, there's a lot of emotion that's involved. There's a lot of, you know, secondary trauma that we experience just from experiencing everyone else's trauma all day. That's a fact of the job. And unless we can take
Yeah.
care of ourselves, then we really, you know, we aren't going to do justice to the job.
So foundationally, in your practice, the philosophy includes, first and foremost, to take care of yourself,
Yes,
correct?
absolutely. That's right. So lifestyle medicine really is about all of the aspects of lifestyle. So I focus a lot on nutrition because I think that nutrition is foundational to everything else that we do. I think it impacts our ability to exercise. I think it impacts our ability to sleep well. I think it
Right.
impacts our ability to relate to other people well. So I feel like by addressing the issue of right eating, that a lot of times a lot of those other pieces will fall into place once we get our food in better order, because a lot of times our food just gets so out of control that the rest of our life gets out of control. And if we can get our food back into alignment, then many times we can get our life back into alignment. And so that's where I usually like to start with people, but it's very true. It's really about the whole full spectrum of lifestyle, about managing our stress, about managing our sleep, about our physical activity, and avoiding, you know, substances that are risky. So yeah, lifestyle medicine
So
looks
with
at the
someone
whole picture.
who is that, and that's excellent. I something that popped in, I was thinking, when you are working with someone, do you have to negotiate or navigate how people operate within boundaries with their spouse, their partners, or people at work? How does that, is that something that you also help with?
Absolutely. There is a lot when it comes to relating to other people around food. And again, a lot of times my focus is really on, number one, we have to take care of ourselves first, right? So focusing on our own plate, right? Our own job is our own plate, right? Like,
Right?
if we can get our own plate right, we're doing good. So what I tell people is, you know, keep your eyes on your own plate. Not right?
Not on somebody else's dessert.
Exactly. So it really does come down to that for me is really taking care of yourself. But yeah, there can be there's things that sometimes have to be worked out in relationships, right? Around food, particularly when you're making some changes that are pretty significant. I made some radical changes in my diet, and I teach a class called Radical Wellness because, you know, losing 100 pounds, that it's a radical change. It required radical changes for me to get there. And yeah, it created some interesting dynamics within the relationship, right? But actually, it really worked out for the best because my spouse also ended up losing 95 pounds. And so it's something that, you know, this is another thing as a practitioner, like I can't prescribe a medication that's going to lower your husband's blood pressure, right? But I can prescribe a diet that might, right? That's what happened to
Right?
me. I changed my diet and my spouse lost 95 pounds. That doesn't happen with a pill.
Right. That is your basic emotional ripple effect when somebody takes their life seriously to make good changes. So when I think about someone who wants to do that, but they have a partner or spouse that is adversarial, can you help them navigate that? Or is there someone that you would think of that might be able to help with that?
Yeah, so when a spouse is adversarial, I usually see that really as, everybody has autonomy. They have free will, and they may feel threatened by your choices, that it's going to somehow impact their autonomy or their free will. So I
Right?
feel like as long as you are communicating that this is what I'm doing for me, and I'm not here to try to change you, I accept you and love you the way you are, and I love you no matter what you eat, then really that helps to reduce the tensions, I think, and to really put the focus on the relationship and how important that is, and kind of take the heat or the focus off of whatever is on everybody else's plate, right?
Right. That can make or break how somebody succeeds.
Absolutely, it can. You're right. Yeah.
And I feel that in our society, to some people view a healthy relationship in we do all things together. We go eat together, we eat the same, and that's difficult for someone that needs to and wants to make a big change. So it's good that there's an outlet this that you can speak to that. I think that scares a lot of people making big changes and not having support.
Absolutely. I think support is the key, honestly, especially when you're going through a big lifestyle change like this. And that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I like doing lifestyle medicine, is because in traditional allopathic medicine, I might see somebody once a year. I can't help somebody to make a lifestyle change if I see them once a year, you know. So I like to work with people on a more frequent basis, particularly when they're at the start of making a big lifestyle change like this, because I really do feel like support is important in that beginning phase, particularly.
So do you feel as a nurse practitioner you are closer to the reality of real life and what goes on along with your own personal journey than a general practitioner?
Well, I think so, particularly because of my experience. I've been in a big body. I know what it's like to be in a big body. I've struggled with food addiction. I've, seen the ravages also over 20 years of nursing of what chronic disease does to people. So I think I have a really good picture of what that looks like. And I also feel like, because I've walked the walk and I've had to make these transitions myself, that I'm able to really relate to people where they're at. And I feel like I also can inspire people in that way, because they can look at my before picture and say, okay, yeah, I can relate to that. Sometimes, they look at me now and they're like, you don't look like you could have had a weight problem, right? But I did, and I've got before pictures to prove it.
And good on you for wanting to show them. That itself is that's a strength that most people don't have.
Yeah, I'm
Then
happy to share.
as I was looking at your site, your comprehensive visits and packages, there was a blip, and I'm addressing this because of the COVID thing right now, where there's a in-home visit. Is that shifted to being video only?
I have been since the COVID started, yes, and I do like to do home visits, and I do hope to be getting back to doing those again because I actually think it's really powerful. I did home care for many years, and I just feel like it's very powerful to see people in their home environment and to get a feel for what that is really like to live in that situation. Um, I feel like I can know people better when I'm able to do that. And I'm also able to, I work with people about engineering their environment to support their success. And so when I'm in their environment, I can get ideas about how that might really look in their setting, in their life, right? So I do like to do that, and
So
I do hope to be getting back to
different
doing that.
comprehensive packages. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was just saying, yeah, I'm hoping to get back to doing that again real soon.
Well, and as it is, I think we're all hoping to have things, whatever the norm is, have normalcy come back, whatever that looks like. It's been very stressful. I'm going to assume you see people who are under a great deal of stress, and that leads them to food also.
It absolutely can. You're right.
So when you're addressing the COVID thing, how does that look to them? How do you calm them and help navigate?
So that's one of the really interesting things is that by focusing on the food, by getting the food right, like I mentioned before, it can give a lot of structure and a lot of stability to your life that may have been missing. And so I like to still, even with that, food helps your stress level, right? So I help people to structure a meal plan that helps stabilize their day so that they have the structure that kind of holds their day together. And it gives, I feel, a sense of security and a sense of stability, even amidst all the change that we're going through, all the craziness that we're going through. We can still have a meal plan that is stable and steady and reliable and healthy, and it's supporting us and nurturing us and feeding us so that we feel supported throughout the day. And so I help people, that's where I really start, is by getting a meal plan for someone that's just really going to support them in their life.
So really, when you're talking and listening to all this wonderful information, I am seeing such a multifaceted way that you work. It's hard to understand all that just on the website, but listening to you just have a number of ways to truly help people, and it's fabulous.
Thank you. I do. I know it's a little hard to put in words, and I have found that to be true because I do feel like with my nursing background, with my personal experience, now with my training in lifestyle medicine, I also have a yoga teacher training, and I've done hypnotherapy training, and so I actually have a pretty diverse background of different tools that I can use. And so it is a little hard to put into words, though, what I do exactly.
Oh, the website would be a mile long, sounds like. But how wonderful to have all of that at your hands for your clients.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is because
pretty
it's good for
astounding.
me because everybody is so unique and different, and you just never know. I mean, for me, it's just really exciting to work with so many people who are so different, because that way I get to use new tools and I get to learn new things too about what, what works for you. It may not be anything else, it may be a completely unique combination of things tools that I have that I can help support you with that I may not use with anybody else. You never know, right? Like, so
Right.
it's really fun and exciting to me to work with different people and get so many different perspectives and to keep learning and keep growing. So
That is awesome. So with that said, is there any reading material or any books that you would recommend people to kind of acquaint themselves without, if somebody's not necessarily wanting to take the step right off the bat for an appointment, but they can acquaint themselves with the things you've talked about? Is there something that nature?
So yeah, I think that probably one of the best books that I read early on that really opened my eyes to this kind of lifestyle medicine approach and the power of a whole food plant-based diet was a book called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. It really was so eye-opening to me that we could reverse diseases with the power of plants. That was just the big game changer for me, because once I knew that we could actually reverse disease, that we could reverse type 2 diabetes, that we could reverse obesity, that's what I did. I reversed my obesity. I reversed my hypertension. Once I learned that these diseases are actually reversible, that heart disease is reversible, that we can actually heal it, that was the way I wanted to go. And so that book for me opened my eyes to the potential, the possibility that we can heal our bodies. And so that's one that I really like to recommend to people.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I think we have taken up so much of your time. I know how busy things can get. So I am going to say thank you for coming on, and I found it incredibly enlightening. I had no idea that there was such a thing called lifestyle medicine. So it's really nice here. There is another alternative to head to. Everybody's different. So thank you for coming on.
Yes. Thank you for having me, Katharine.
Hey everybody, if you have enjoyed this video and you've seen some of the others, please give it a like and be sure to subscribe to the channel for future interviews that are coming up, and learn more about the local practitioners you live around and with here in Snohomish. Thanks.